So we're on P5. So this is mostly review of Algebra 1, Algebra 2, with a little bit of new stuff. Maybe. I don't know how good your Algebra 2 teachers were. But here's what we're going to learn. What does it mean to solve an equation? So if we were sitting in class, I would tell you, discuss with a partner in your groups. What does the solution to a defined equation really mean? So what does it mean? And if you know what the solution is, you can work that out. And we're going to learn how to graph the related functions. I don't know if you know that term, related functions. And then what do the solutions look like? So there's a lot of concepts here. So feel free to use the chat or start talking out loud. You guys did share some of your preferences with partners, so that's good. So I know you know some people in here.
The solution to the following equation is when it hits the x-axis.
Where it hits the x-axis, okay.
Yeah. Where the function hits it.
Okay.
Mm.
I got x equals 10 as a solution.
X equals 10?
There's going to be two solutions.
I got two real solutions, yeah. I got a -2 and +4.
So I heard x equals 10, -2, 4. Anybody else?
I also got x equals 4.
I got x equals 4 too.
I'm gonna throw this writing pad in the trash. All right, so I heard 3 of you say x equals 4. Okay, good. So, I mean, without even doing any real algebra, we could just kind of reason that, well, I'm gonna take some quantity and square it, and it has to equal 9. So we should know our powers, right? Some number squared is 9, well, that number is what? 3, right? 3 squared is 9. So whatever is in here, if I square it, it equals 9. So I know this number in here should be 3. Is there another number when I square it, it equals 9?
Negative.
-3. So -3 squared also equals 9. So then I know that this number, when I subtract 1, has to be equal to 3 or -3, right? So without even doing any real algebra, just kind of thinking in my head. So I know if x is 4, 4 minus 1 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. So 4 is a good answer. Someone said -2. Well, what's -2 minus 1? -3. So -2 is a good answer. And maybe we are still waking up and we forgot to see the 2. Because if the squared wasn't there, I agree. 10 minus 1 gets us 9. But maybe we overlooked the 2 there. Because 10 minus 1 is 9, and 9 squared would be 81, which is not 9. So be careful there. But we could have solved this with algebra, right? We could have took the square root of both sides. Square root of the squared, these go away. So then you have the square root of 9, which gives us the plus or -3, which will give us both our answers here. So that's using algebra. But what does this really mean, right? I mean, what did we find? We found x is -2 and x is 4. So what? Who cares? Maybe in your previous math experience, you said, oh, teacher, x is -2, x is 4, and the teacher says, great, and everyone's happy, and you move on. Well, you'll find in my class this doesn't make me happy. It's correct, but I want to know, what the heck did we just do? What does it really mean?
The two solutions
There are two solutions.
for a parabola.
Okay, it's a little warmer, right? We see something squared is a parabola. So then if we take that discussion to this, related functions, some of you recognize the x minus 1 squared as a parabola. What does y equal 9 look like? If I graph this, what would I see?
A line going up and down.
Horizontal line.
Horizontal line, very good.
Oh,
So I would see a horizontal line at y equals 9, and I would see a parabola. Where's the vertex of the parabola? Someone impress me.
isn't it a negative one? It's one.
Your transformations, when we did,
Isn't it 0, 1?
it'd be at close, the other way,
What, 1, 0?
1, 0, right? So this says we translate 1 to the right from the origin, so it'd be at 1, 0. And this opens up, and you know how to count 1, 1, 2, 4, right? So if I graph this and I graph this, what would happen? I'm curious. I should have inserted a slide here. Let's see. No, if I did not. So let me open up another window here. Do you all have graphing calculators at home?
No.
No.
I do.
I mean, you guys didn't steal one from the school last year? Let's see. All right. Do you guys see my browser window?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So maybe some of you are familiar with Desmos. If not, it's pretty easy to find, right? I just showed you. Go to Google, type in Desmos, and it's the first thing that comes up. And look at that, graphing calculator. So what was the equation? Y equal x minus 1, right? And then to get the squared, there's a little keyboard down here. And then you just hit squared. So there's my parabola. And if you click here, you can type in another one. And I believe we had 9, right? And I don't see it, but if I move, just clicking and dragging, and you can zoom in or out. But does anyone see anything crazy here? Like, where's my mouse going? It's going the wrong way. Here we go. -1. Yeah, that's good enough. Anyone see anything crazy here?
And that the parabola intersects the y equals 9 at 2 points.
And what's the x coordinate?
Or
Do you
so
see,
what?
see the little
Negative 2 and 4.
Oh, -2.
What's the x coordinate? -2. What's the x coordinate over here?
+4.
+4. -2 and +4. Those smell familiar. we see those numbers earlier?
Yeah.
Hey, look at that, -2 and +4. So someone said earlier that the solution was where it crosses the x-axis. And you're kind of right, if this was equal to 0. So if we subtracted the 9, and we graphed a -9 and a y equals 0, then it'd be where it intersects the x-axis. But all we did was translate our x-axis up 9 units, right? And so the solution is these two related functions intersect. So that's what we're getting at. That's what I'm getting at. Is every time you're solving an equation, you're essentially finding where the related functions intersect. So where does this parabola x minus 1 squared intersect the graph of this horizontal line, y equals 9? Well, the x value where they intersected was -2 and 4, right? And if you substitute, you get 9. And so if we went back to the other screen, where's my Desmos? What's the y coordinate where they intersect?
9.
9. What's the y coordinate where they intersect? 9. What? Crazy, right? So I want you to start seeing how things are related in mathematics, not just, oh, I got the answer. Okay, great. Who cares? What does the answer mean? What are we doing? Right? So in pre-cal, or at least in my pre-cal class, I want you guys to learn more than just how to find the answer. All right. So now we get to review how to solve equations using all 4 different methods. So you should know how to solve using square roots, how to solve by completing the square, how to solve with quadratic formula, and how to solve by factoring. Right? There's my. And so when I say related equations, you could graph this, and then you could graph y equals 5. So when it says verify graphically, you can use Desmos like I just showed you. You would type y equals all of this on one equation, and then on a new equation, you would type y equals 5, and your solutions, your x equals whatever, should be the x coordinate of where these intersect. And that's true for all of these. So see, since this one is equal to 0, this is where it would intersect the x-axis. And you would set this to y equals this. That's how you do it graphically, right? That's true for all of these. This would be one equation, this is the other. So you would say y equals 5, and you would say y equals this. You graph this, and you look at where do they intersect, and be the x coordinates. So this again would be the or the x-axis, since it's y equals 0. And you graph y equals this, right? But that's to verify after we're done solving. So let's go ahead and try solving these. So how do we solve this using square roots?
You add 4, and then you take the square root.
So add 4 and take the square root.
Yeah.
All right. So we would add 4 to get 2x minus 1 squared equals 9. And then square root to get 2x minus 1 is
3.
Positive or -3, plus or minus 3.
minus 3. Good. And then we would
Add
1. So then we have 1 plus or minus 3. So 2x. So if we split this up, right, we would have 2x equals, what's 1 minus 3?
-2.
-2. So we have 2x equals -2. Or we would have 2x equals 1 plus 3 is 4. And divide the 2. Divide the 2. So x would be
-1.
-1 or
2.
So that's how you would solve this with square roots. And then, of course, we could go back to Desmos and graph this. And I would show you or prove to you that they intersect at -1 and 2. What about completing the square?
Divided by -2 first.
Good. We need that leading coefficient. So we need this to equal 1. So if you have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, your a has to equal 1. So to make this 1, we divide by -2, -2, -2, 2. That gives you x squared minus 4x plus 6. Then what?
Then add,
Factor.
I think add 8. I mean 2 to both sides.
Maybe. You might be right. I teach it the long way. I push my over first, right? That's horrible. I don't know what's going on with my writing pad here. I have to buy a new one. All right, so this would be a 4. This is your -6. So remember, now is where we do half of b and square it. So here's our b. So -4 divided by 2. That's -2. -2 squared is 4. So we would add 4 on both sides. Now we could factor this as a perfect square. And -6 plus 4,
-2.
2. And now it's like the previous slide, solve by taking the square root. So now we square root. Now we square root. And uh-oh. What happened?
It's a negative number. And
And it's an imaginary number. We can't square root that, so this has what?
no real solutions.
So what does that mean in terms of the graph?
That is line across the new x-axis.
Am I going to cross the x-axis? So notice this is a negative quadratic. It's going to open down. This is going to be your y-intercept, -12. So you're going to be way down here at -12. And this thing opens down, something like that. So it never crosses this, so it can never equal 0. Right? How are we going to get this thing up here to equal 0 when it's stuck down here? Or not. So there's no real solution. So that's why it's helpful to understand and know the bigger picture. So yeah, you might be good at doing some algebra and you get to this, but I want to make sure you understand what the heck are you doing, right? So if you look at this, this is a parabola. You could graph y equals this guy. You could graph y equals 0 and see where they intersect. So if you go back to Desmos and graph both of them, you see they do not intersect. So because they do not intersect, there's no real solution. What about quadratic formula?
First get into ax squared minus, or ax squared plus bx plus c, like that little.
Yeah, we gotta bring this over.
Yeah.
So we said equals 0, that's the first step. And then we say x equals
Negative b plus or minus
square root
square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a.
over 2a. Awesome. And then these are alphabetical, right? A, B, C.
Yeah.
Then you just substitute and work it out. So this one's kind of boring. Right? Anyone can do this one. This has been known for thousands of years. Three. Let's see. Check me, make sure I did that right.
Yeah.
There's 6 squared, that's 36. Minus a minus is a plus. 5 times 4, 20, that's 60. 3 times 2 is 6. So then that gives 6 plus or minus square root of 96.
Yeah.
And does 96 simplify? 3,
Mm.
32. Let's see.
It's 16 times 6. So 4 square root of 6.
60 and 36, 96. I agree. So you get 4 roots of 6. 6 plus or minus 4 roots of 6. And 2 goes into these guys. So you get 3 plus or minus 2 over 3. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you graph this one, it'd be kind of hard to find this, right? I think Desmos would probably give you some ugly decimal. But you could convert it to a decimal and just compare it to what you see on Desmos. So there you go. And I think there's one more. Factoring. Do you guys remember how to factor?
Yeah.
So factoring means, oh, there we go. You got your parentheses. So there's only one way to get 2x squared. That's 2x times x. There's only one way to get 2. That's 2 times 1. But I want -3. So I'm going to put a 2 and a 1. So that 2 times 2 is 4. So -4 plus 1 gives me -3. 2x plus 1 is 0. Or x minus 2 is 0. So you move the 1 over, so 2 -1. Here we get x is 2. So here x is -1. All right. So hopefully that was a good review of algebra. All right. Pretty easy. So make sure you know all 4 forms, or all 4 methods, I should say. You know all 4 methods and how to solve. So by square roots, by completing a square, quadratic formula, and by factoring. You'll be practicing this in your homework. So now solving by finding intersections, solving by graphing, or solutions, how do you know? So if you know how to stay in the meeting and open another window, you could try to go to Desmos. It's easier in my classroom. I'd say grab a calculator. But be careful. If you leave the meeting, you have to jump back in. But just open another window, go to Google, go to Desmos. Type in the left-hand side as one function, and then type in the right-hand side as another function. Oops, -3. That's 2. think absolute value is hiding here. Function.
On the calculator, how do you type absolute value?
Oh, there it is. I'm looking too far. It's right here. Do you see my screen? So if you're on Desmos, you click this bottom left little keypad, and it's right under the parentheses. So hopefully you found it. And then the squared is also down there. So Desmos is very handy if you don't have a graphing calculator. This is what I'll refer you guys to as we get into the chapters on graphing. So this will be able to graph whatever you need. So just kind of learn where the buttons are. So absolute values down here on the keypad. And so now you should be able to solve that equation. So let's call on Jaden. Is Jaden still in the room? Jaden Ramirez. I don't see Jaden Ramirez. Maybe she absent today. Or he. What about Jared? Is Jared here? Jared's here. So Jared, what'd you get for X?
I don't really understand how to do this, to be honest.
All right, that's fair. Very good. So maybe I went too fast or didn't explain it right. So let me switch cameras so you can see here. So do you see the whiteboard here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so forget my answer there, you didn't see nothing. So here is an equation, and I would never ask you to solve this using algebra. Because you're like, well, what's the inverse of absolute value, right? We don't know. How do I get that out of there? Okay. But I can solve this graphically, because if you understand what this symbol really means, if I told you 5 equals 5, well, of course, that's obvious, right? 5 is the same as 5. If I told you x minus 1 was 5, do you know what x is?
6.
6. Because 6 minus 1 has to be 5. So you know that x has to be 6, right? So as we get past algebra 1, algebra 2, we start looking at things and start to realize, hey, if I have x minus 1 equals 5, I can graph these things and understand and realize the bigger picture. So I don't know if you can still see my whiteboard or if I need to stop sharing. Can you see the whiteboard or is it too small?
It's a little too small.
Let's zoom in there. There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we say, okay, if I split this up and say this is equal to this, what if I just said this is y and this is y? Well, doesn't y equal y? Sure. So now I'm saying I have two equations. I have y equals x minus 1, and I have y equals 5. So the left side has to equal the right side. So this equation, this function, has to equal this one. They're both y values. So if I graph y equals 5, That's a horizontal line here at 5, right? And then I could graph y equals x minus 1. So here's minus 1. And the slope of 1. And I just keep doing the slope of 1. So I have this line. And then I have the other line. And then I say, oh, hey, look, they crossed right there. So what we're really asking is, what is the x value when the y value are the same? Because that's what we're saying. When does y equal y? When does x minus 1 equal 5? Well, when do they have the same y value? When does this function equal this function? So this function is the same y value as this function when x is what?
6.
6. And we know that. So when x is 6, 6 minus 1, I get 5. 5 is 5. I'm happy. So this is what we do when we solve equations. We're finding the x value that makes this equation true. An equation is true when these functions intersect. So that's the concept, right? So then the same is true for these guys. If we make it a little, I don't want to say more complex, but more interesting. So now we're just going to graph this side as a y function and this side as a y function. So y equals absolute value x minus 3 plus 2, and y equals x minus 3 squared minus 4. So I'm essentially asking, where do these functions intersect? And they'll intersect at the x value is 0 and 6, I believe, if you graph them on Desmos. So when x is 0, this function is equal to this function. They're crossing at the same point. And when x is 6, same story. So we could find the y value where they cross, just substitute those in. But that's the idea. So hopefully that answered your question. You won't have to do this for every homework problem, right? In the homework, you just have to, like algebra, just solve the equation, right? But then some of them, they'll say verify graphically, so you just use Desmos to graph. So you can see if you hover over that point, then it'd be 5. So if you substitute 0 or 6 into that equation, you should get 5 equals 5. And over here, 6 and 5. So are we good there? Hopefully. And I think we were almost done with everything. Yeah, that was the last one.